Greetings, and welcome to a brief forum created by volunteers with the Citizens Climate Lobby. My name is Katya Gordon. I am one of the Minnesota Northland CCL volunteers who have worked for many years to bring people from different political perspectives together to solve our climate crisis. Our group has observed a long-term stalemate in Minnesota that says it's jobs or the environment. In this video, we describe jobs for the environment. Our northern Minnesota region is seeking sustainable jobs. The emerging clean energy economy offers our communities a tremendous opportunity. In the following few minutes, we will highlight real-world, practical, and sustainable economic development opportunities. We see a potential game changer for the Iron Range and Northeast Minnesota. We hope you will give us a few minutes to see if our vision has merit. If it does, we hope you will take the actions suggested at the end to help our decision makers bring it to life. Thank you for your time.
A little bit about Citizens Climate Lobby. On the national side, we're known for focusing on the power of a transformative carbon fee and dividend system. And we're also focused on electrification, the importance of clean energy permitting reform, and on supporting healthy forests. For our presentation this morning, you'll hear from the following 5 gentlemen. Russ Mattson is an electrical engineer out of Two Harbors, Minnesota. Jeff Hansen is the founder of Clearwater BioLogic out of Babbitt, Minnesota. Dr. Mike Overend is a retired veterinarian in Two Harbors, Minnesota. Dr. Charlie Orsek is a retired child psychologist and former foreman with Erie Mining. And Dr. Eric Enberg is a family medicine doctor based out of Hermantown. So with that, thank you all so much for being here, and we look forward to a rousing presentation together to help transform our northern Minnesota economy to be more sustainable and green.
The history of northern Minnesota is often told as a story of boom followed by bust. But perhaps a better description is stress followed by success. In particular, mining on the Iron Range is a story of stressful turning points, followed by successful adaptation. Challenges were tackled with tough determination and a willingness to innovate. By the end of World War II, high-grade iron ore was becoming harder to find. At that time, taconite was considered waste, at least until E.W. Davis figured out a way to concentrate and pelletize it. The rest is history. The iron mining and steel industry, so important to our regional economy, now face another turning point. The drive to decarbonize the iron to steelmaking process in response to climate change. Steelmaking accounts for approximately 8% of worldwide carbon emissions. Mitigating these emissions would be a very significant step in combating climate change. Moreover, the necessary transition away from fossil fuels to a clean energy economy will require more, not less steel. But what kind of steel? Major steel users, the auto industry for one, are asking for low carbon intensity steel. In other words, green steel. The transition to green steel and a clean energy economy provides not only challenges, but great opportunities as well. In this transition, trillions of dollars will be invested and millions of good jobs created. This can be a win-win-win. Lower carbon emissions, economic and job growth, and preserving our northern Minnesota way of life for our children and grandchildren. The question is, so why not here in northern Minnesota? How can we take advantage of our many assets? Access to natural resources, a skilled workforce, available renewable energy, and strategic positions on the electric transmission and transportation grids. More specifically, what are the ingredients necessary for our region to be a player in the making of green steel? First, to make green steel, we need to find innovative ways to decarbonize ore processing and steelmaking. Second, to make green steel, we need access to clean, renewable energy, wind, solar, hydro, and hydrogen. Third, to make green steel, we need electric transmission capacity to get the power where it is needed and means of storing power, such as batteries and pumped hydro. Fourth, to make steel green, we need innovative technologies to address problematic byproducts of mining, in particular, ways to mitigate sulfate discharge. For the remainder of this video, let's take a closer look at each of these ingredients.
Hi, I'm Eric Enberg, and I'm here to talk about clean steel production. The production of green, clean steel and iron in northeastern Minnesota is an up-and-coming thing, and there are a couple of interesting technologies that I want to talk to you about today. So the first one is molten oxide electrolysis. Molten oxide electrolysis is basically just taking iron ore from the mine and then running gobs of electricity through it in order to separate the iron from the oxygen that it's bound to. That's what makes rust or iron ore. It needs a lot of cheap renewable electricity. Because it is very modular, it is something that can be done at the mouth of the mine, and it is a non-toxic process. It's the only thing that comes out of it is oxygen. It allows for value-added steel manufacturing on the Iron Range, and because it can only operate with cheap renewable electricity, it's really immune from carbon pricing. The commercialization of this process is expected around 2025, and potentially a large number of diverse jobs could be coming to the Iron Range because of this, as you're able to go and produce iron, and if you mix a little bit of carbon into it, you can make steel, and then that can be used for all kinds of manufacturing jobs on the Iron Range. Next is low temperature iron. Low temperature iron uses an acid to liberate the iron from the ore, and then you run electric current through it, and it electroplates the iron out. This then in turn feeds an electric arc furnace, which is the way in which most steel is actually produced in this country using scrap steel. But this sort of source of iron would be ideal for it. Also, interestingly enough, you get some other minerals out of this process as well, such as copper, aluminum, manganese, and silicon. The pilot for this project is expected to be done in Pueblo, Colorado. Direct reduced iron with hydrogen. This is probably the process that is furthest along. The idea being is that green renewable energy would be used to produce the hydrogen, and then the hydrogen is used to produce that high heat that is necessary to dissociate the iron from the oxygen and produce iron. This, in other words, produces sponge iron, and that can also be fed into an electric arc furnace. You get the sense that electric arc furnaces are kind of have these cosmopolitan tastes when it comes to iron. The hybrid system in Sweden is now shipping this steel. So this is actually a commercially viable process. Thermochemical reduction and oxidation. That's a mouthful of a label for a process, which is kind of actually complex. But if I can kind of boil it down, it uses perovskite crystals in order to steal oxygen off of carbon dioxide, creating carbon monoxide in the process of a blast furnace. And then that carbon monoxide goes back to the ore and steals another oxygen off of the ore, creating pure iron. And it is half the cost of using coking coal, and you get a 90% carbon dioxide reduction. This one, however, is probably the furthest from commercialization of the things that we looked at. It's still on the lab bench. There are a couple of issues that they have to resolve. Okay, so where to experiment? Well, the old Esser plant has a massive electrical supply already attached to it, and it would be a perfect location to do things like molten oxide electrolysis, low temperature iron, etc. And possibly could be home to a semi-finished steel production. That's it for me. There's some very exciting things going on out there, and that we can all look forward to. Thank you.
I'm Mike Overend, and I want to talk to you about a new technology that's an important clean energy solution and which will change our world. This is the opportunity that is presented by the Form Energy Iron Air Battery. Manufacturing this battery in Northeast Minnesota is a unique opportunity offering permanent, strong job growth for iron mining and sustainable, environmentally friendly manufacturing jobs for range communities. These batteries are a critically important climate solution, which lower costs for clean energy. And importantly, this technology does not require controversial metal resources or unreliable supply chains. Our global energy system has a major problem. Burning fossil fuels causes major economic damage and inflation while it destroys our environment and our health. In 2022, over 60% of our global electricity came from burning dirty and expensive fossil fuels, creating a huge source of pollution, waste, and extra expense. These are also a major source of greenhouse gas emissions, which cause severe losses from floods, droughts, and fires, disease, famine, and wars. The air pollution from burning fossil fuels like coal and diesel is responsible for about 1 in 5 premature deaths worldwide from chronic respiratory and heart disease, according to Harvard School of Public Health. The solution is moving to 100% clean, cheap, renewable energy to power all our needs with clean electricity. This is called beneficial electrification, and it eliminates up to 80% of all greenhouse gas emissions. Unfortunately, the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow. Wind and solar are intermittent energy sources, and current utility batteries only last for 4 hours. For 24/7 reliability of renewable energy, we need a utility scale battery that lasts for multiple days. Form Energy saw this need for 24/7 reliability and created a cost-effective, clean, and scalable solution. Their iron air battery instantly provides up to 100 hours of continuous power, which utilities can use for both our routine and emergency energy storage needs. Form Energy's iron air battery is unique for storing excess wind and solar energy, making it 24/7 reliable. It uses Minnesota's abundant, affordable iron products. It uses safe, non-flammable design and recyclable, non-toxic components. It's flexible and modular to meet the energy storage needs of any major utility. The iron air battery uses the common chemical reaction of rusting of iron-based metal using water and oxygen from the air to instantly release stored electricity for up to 100 hours at 1/10 the cost of current lithium-based storage batteries, and the only byproduct is oxygen. Northeast Minnesota has the unique resources which are perfect for Form Energy to manufacture iron air batteries here. We have skilled labor, iron ore, and the potential for DRI pellet production. We have advanced electric grid and transportation infrastructure. Northeast Minnesota is a perfect home to manufacture Form batteries. Form Energy is building their first manufacturing facility in Weirton, West Virginia, creating 750 new jobs with a $760 million investment. The US is expected to install 75 gigawatts of battery storage by 2027. That's the equivalent of 75 large coal-fired power plants. Form will need to make additional manufacturing facilities happen to meet this demand. Manufacturing of Form's iron air battery is a unique opportunity for Northeast Minnesota, offering sustainable iron mining jobs, good construction jobs, sustainable battery manufacturing jobs, and it makes green steel and other clean energy manufacturing in Minnesota possible as well. Our communities and leaders need to help recruit Form Energy manufacturing to Northeast Minnesota. These are mining jobs for people and the environment, which will sustain and unite our range communities. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Russ Matson, and I'm today and want to talk about the opportunities for the production, storage, and utilization of green renewable energy in northeastern Minnesota. The driving force behind this opportunity is the growth in renewables, solar, and wind. Recent data from the Energy Information Administration shows that intermittent wind and solar energy production amounted to almost 14% of energy production. Projections by NREL and others indicate wind and solar will double by 2030, reaching almost 1/3 of the United States energy supply needs. Because of the intermittent nature of renewables, energy storage is an absolute necessity. Storage will be necessary for load shifting, voltage control, frequency control, peak shaving, deferral of distribution or transmission projects, curtailment which would occur otherwise, and seriously impact solar and wind production, as well as other functions. As recently as 2018, 4 billion megawatt hours of electricity were consumed in the United States. However, there are only 431 megawatt hours of energy storage. Or put it another way, the energy storage amounts to 1% of the power generated, or less than 10% of all the renewable energy produced today. Today, essentially natural gas is used to fill the gaps relating to intermittency. The most likely candidate to meet this requirement is various technologies of energy storage. Today in the United States, there are approximately 30,000 megawatts of energy storage produced, 92% of which is pumped hydro, which there are 43 such plants in the United States today. Pumped hydro is a mature technology in use for more than 100 years. This is in comparison with lithium ion, which is the most numerous energy supply source, almost 90% of the installations today, but it has many shortcomings, including supply chain issues, material sourcing, competing for other uses for lithium, and the life cycle and costs compared to pumped hydro. There have been recent studies done by the University of Minnesota via the NRRI looking at the feasibility of pumped hydro in northeastern Minnesota at abandoned mine sites. 9 such sites have been identified for further study. Michigan Tech has also completed studies of the feasibility of utilizing underground abandoned mine sites for pumped hydro. The slide shows an existing pumped hydro location in Ludington, Michigan, obviously on Lake Michigan. There are other energy storage technologies that have been studied by the University of Minnesota. One such technology is compressed gas energy storage. Air is compressed and stored underground and returned to the surface when needed to drive a turbine. There are 2 large such facilities in the United States today, one in California and the other in Alabama. There are other storage technologies as well that are suitable in the northeast of Minnesota. I won't go into them in detail, but they are gravity storage where weights are simply lifted to height above grade and released, driving a turbine when needed. Northeastern Minnesota is in a very unique position. All the pieces are in place to utilize and store green renewable energy. We have the transmission infrastructure. We have 2 500 kV lines with quite a bit of capacity. We have existing 345 line into central Wisconsin, and we have multiple 230 kV lines, and HVAC transmission service goes to all the mines today in Minnesota. We have the geology, we have abandoned mine sites, we have water for closed loop or open loop pumped hydro, and in addition to the transmission structure and the geology, we have the transportation infrastructure, ports, highways, and rail from legacy industries. And if that wasn't enough, we also have more green potential. Manitoba Hydro indicates they have the potential of an additional 4,300 megawatts of hydro at existing facilities. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Jeff Hansen from Clearwater BioLogic in Babbitt, Minnesota. In Minnesota, we do have sulfate standards because sulfate does impact wild rice and the health of our water systems. This sulfate comes often from mining features from taconite mining. In the 2018 Tribal Wild Rice Task Force report, they identified using MPCA and DNR data the point sources of sulfate on the Mesabi Iron Range. Mesabi Iron Range, the larger yellow dots show higher concentrations of sulfate and the streams that they do. The blue line is the St. Louis River watershed. We can see that many of these point sources feed into the St. Louis River. As it goes downstream, it gets more diluted, and there is a natural attenuation of sulfate as it goes. This natural attenuation of nature has sulfate that permeates into the anoxic soil where there's no oxygen. So the sulfate reducing bacteria there effectively steal the oxygen to breathe and decompose the organic matter, releasing nitrogen, phosphorus, and mercury. In that process, they also methylate the mercury, which is then soluble in water and gets into our fish in the food chain. That sulfate is effectively converted by sulfate reducing bacteria into hydrogen sulfide. Hydrogen sulfide is that toxic, rotten egg smell that none of us like, and that does damage the wild rice. If there is the right kind of iron available, that hydrogen sulfide will react with the iron to make an insoluble iron sulfide. The Clearwater BioLogic system mimics what nature does there. We have floating bioreactors that operate under the surface of the water where it does not freeze in the wintertime. We provide food for the sulfate-reducing bacteria to effectively convert sulfate to sulfide in step 1. In step 2, we provide iron to it to make iron sulfide, which then can be precipitated out and removed from the system, effectively removing the sulfur from the whole system. In 4 years of a field test in a mine pit lake shown in the picture, we effectively reduced 1,100 milligrams per liter of sulfate to less than 10, which is the wild rice standard. Can handle any flow because it's modular. Add more modules and do that. There are no chemicals added to contaminate the water. The following nature's lead, we are solving the sulfate problem. Biological input is just a nutrient to feed the sulfate reducing bacteria as shown in the jar. Then add DRI pellets or direct reduced iron pellets, which is the right form of iron, to remove the hydrogen sulfide, reacting and making iron sulfide. This eliminates the sulfate and the sulfide, removes the possibility of damaging the wild rice, and meets the standard. It also reduces the specific conductivity of the water, which is an advantage. And a big advantage, it reduces the methylation of mercury downstream. This is a cost-effective system. Why hasn't the industry adopted sulfate standards before? Their defense is it's too expensive. This system is not too expensive. It can meet the 10 milligram per liter standard for wild rice in an effective way. Thank you.
You've made it this far. If you are excited by what you've learned here, please consider taking action by bringing one or more of these technologies to the attention of one of these decision makers. We must all actively ask our leaders and regional stakeholders to engage with these industries and support these clean energy opportunities to bring them to our region. You can call and leave a voice message at their office number, send an email or social media comment, or best of all, pay a quick in-person visit to their office. You can also write a letter to your local paper about this. These are time-sensitive opportunities which Minnesota is in competition with other states to capture. You do not need to be an expert to promote these technologies, so don't be shy. Thank you for doing your part to create the world we want.